Hello and welcome. Brazil is collecting World Cups while England is desperately wondering if it will ever win another. Can this and other quirks of football be explained by mathematics? Well, as the top global soccer tournament continues in South Africa, there are some eerie similarities to past competitions. It seems that Brazil delivers, England disappoints, Germany is consistent, and Italy unpredictable. The Netherlands has been called by many the best side never to win the World Cup because in the past it has breezed through the early stages only to fail when it matters the most. Students of football say there is a method to this madness, that the beautiful game can be explained through numbers. Success in football, some say, is not random, but the sum of a nation's economy, size and culture. So today we ask, can number crunching improve a nation's success in football, and will it help us predict future World Cup winners? Remember, you can join our conversation with your questions and comments. Send an SMS or an email, or simply phone into the show. Well, joining us now from Johannesburg is author and journalist Simon Cooper, who's covering the ongoing Football World Cup in South Africa and has written numerous books on the game. He most recently co-authored Soccernomics: Why England Loses, Why Germany and Brazil Win, and Why the US, Japan, Australia, Turkey, even Iraq are destined to become the kings of the world's most popular sport. Also with us is Al Jazeera's football correspondent Andrew Richardson, who's also covering the championship for us. He's joining us from Cape Town. Gentlemen, I welcome you to the show. And Simon, I'll start with you. Your study of the game suggests that there's a lot that can be predicted. So looking at the way things are going so far, any surprises for you? Has your number crunching held up or not?
I'm surprised by how right our book got is. Of course, there's an element of luck in that, but Stefan Szymanski, my co-author, and I ran a simulation of the World Cup before it was actually played, and we had England losing to Germany on the second round. We thought it would be on penalties, but in fact the England defence collapsed. And yes, I mean, England always loses to Germany, and there are reasons for that, the chief one being population difference. And so you can look at lots of matchups in world football and make predictions based on numbers.
Simon, I'm going to put something from your book. You made some interesting observations where you quantify football by numbers. Let's look at some key points here, okay? You wrote, home advantage is worth 2/3 of a goal per game. That's like getting a goal's head start in 2 out of every 3 games. You also say a team with double the experience of its opponents has the advantage of half a goal per game, or 1 goal every 2 matches. The book also says the best time to buy a player is in his early 20s, and that forwards tend to go downhill after 30. So you're saying that if Germany plays at home against Serbia, it should win. You're also arguing that forwards over 30 years of age might just give up the game.
I mean, Germany isn't always going to beat Serbia, and we saw it happen this time. The Germans got a red card, they missed a penalty, and they lost 1-0. And in football, there's a high level of unpredictability if you look at one single game. So we can't know for sure that Brazil will beat Holland on Friday. What we can say for sure is that if Brazil play Holland 10 times, Brazil will win most of the games, just like Germany will usually beat Serbia. And just like playing at home, South Africa almost certainly did better than they would otherwise have done. So yes, there are rules. I mean, as a forward over 30, I would keep playing because I'd like to keep earning £1 million a year or whatever they get. But would I, as a club chairman, buy a forward over 30? I would think very, very hard about that.
Okay. Andrew Richardson, I want to get your take on, you've been covering the tournament for us, your take on what's going on, and also this approach to football, looking at it through the numbers as maybe opposed to just the emotion.
Yeah, I think there's an element of both, obviously. Funnily enough, I was at the South Africa Science Institute, Sports Science Institute only today, and we were talking to some professors and doctors there, and they were saying that up to 99% of how a team performs in a game can be down to preparation. And that if the preparation is not there, not just in the days before a game, but in the months and the years, and if the structure isn't there for a team, they'll come into a game unprepared and won't perform. And they were saying that the South Africa team really had no chance of doing well at this tournament. So obviously they had home advantage, but there's only so far that emotion and Vuvuzelas can take you in. That if the structure isn't there, if the league isn't properly formed, if the youth structure is not properly there, then there's only so far that home support can take you. And they were really convinced that if South Africa had had a better preparation for this tournament, they could have done better than how they did.
Andrew, let me get that. You mentioned the Vuvuzelas, which there's been some controversy about, with players saying that the noise from those long trumpets are causing some distraction. I'm not sure it's something that Simon's factored in his book, but I want to get your reaction to what people have been saying about the Vuvuzelas.
Well, I must admit, when we were first here, we thought this is fantastic. The Vuvuzelas, great noise, great colour, but I've got to be honest, they do become a little bit annoying over time. I mean, we come from a footballing culture where singing is so important at football games, and it's the same within Africa as well. Singing's so important at football games, and with Vuvuzelas, it's just like a sort of monotonous drone of bees kind of around the stadium. It is actually better when you're in the grounds. It's better when you're in the grounds and you do feel the atmosphere more. I think on the television, when I've watched games on the television, it's highly annoying, but within the grounds it is much more exciting. Funnily enough, the referees were holding an open day for the media this week, and they're actually simulating Vuvuzela noise through loud tannoys so that they can prepare themselves for when they're actually in a match situation.
All right, you know, it's certainly very colourful. We're looking at some of the videos there of them being blown there. Simon, let me get another question to you here with an email that came in, and then some of the quotes from your book. Now, the email is from Amin Aulachen, who says, in football, you can prevent opposing players from expressing their talents by using tactics based on right calculations and precise studies. Well, let's look at the case of England and what you said about English fans in Soccernomics in your book, which happened to come true at this World Cup as well. Let's take a look. You say, at the beginning of every World Cup, England fans believe their team will win the trophy. You say, in stage 2, England meets a former wartime enemy in an eagerly anticipated match. Next, English fans believe the crucial game turns against their team on a freakish piece of bad luck that could only happen to them. In stage 4, the fans begin to think everyone, including the referees, cheating against England. As you have guessed it by now, in the next stage, England has crashed out of the tournament fairly early. Normal life resumes in phase 6, but the defeat still rankles. So the fans then find a scapegoat, and the media has a field day. And once the dust has finally settled, the final stage fans believe England will win the next World Cup. I mean, does this really explain England's fate? Why was there such a weight of expectation? Why the passion, and why does it end up like this?
I think there's 2 reasons. One is we have a tabloid media bigger than in almost any other country that needs to sell newspapers. And you don't sell newspapers in the months before the World Cup by saying, well, you know, we'll probably reach the second round and then go home. That's boring. So you say England is going to win the World Cup, and you get the manager to say, as Capello duly said, we can win the World Cup, and you drum up the expectations. And the other reason why it works in England, why the English are inclined to believe it, is because they see themselves rightly as the mother country of modern football. They invented the modern game, and they think that gives them a sort of right to win it or to be a challenger. England's rightful position, many English fans believe, is at the top of the game. And what we show in the book is this is complete nonsense, because England has a lot of international experience, but so do Germany, Argentina, Brazil. They all have about the same number of international matches played. And so England's experience doesn't really give it any sort of leg up at all. And England's rightful place is probably to go out in the second round and quarterfinals. So you always have with England, and I think the rest of the world finds it quite funny, the English find it quite painful, the imbalance between massive expectations and anticlimactic reality.
Andrew, we had an email that came in from a Riz Khan. Same name as mine. It says, science and calculations can be helpful in football. FIFA's refusal to use video technology, even when other sports are doing it, is not making a convincing argument. Now, of course, that seems to be changing now. I mean, and for England, it was quite a bit of a blow. I think it might have been different, wouldn't it, Andrew?
I don't know about that. I mean, if that goal had been allowed at 2-2, then obviously the whole dynamic of that game would have changed. I think ultimately Germany were a much better team than England. You've got to look at Mr. Sepp Blatter. I mean, ultimately, if change is going to happen, his state of mind is going to have to change. He's always been against it. There's been a slight shift in the last 24, 48 hours saying they will look at video technology again. His feeling has always been that there needs to be a human element to football, that bringing in video referees and goal line technology would cause constant disruption in the game. Now, I think it would if every offside decision, every handball decision was referred to a video referee or goal line technology. But goal line technology itself, that's an instantaneous thing that I'm sure has to be looked at, particularly after this Frank Lampard goal, because billions of people around the globe are watching this game, and it just makes FIFA and the World Cup look very stupid. There are many other sports where similar goal line technology is used, be it cricket or tennis, and I think it's inevitable that at some point it will come into football.
Simon, you know, you mentioned just before I got to Andrew, you mentioned about the massive expectation in England that's disproportionate to its potential. What would it take, in your opinion, for England to win the World Cup again? Is it a selection of players? Is it the background of the players? Because I know in your book you really look at a lot of factors when it comes to what makes up a team and what might make that team win.
Well, one is luck. I mean, once you're in the second round or the quarterfinals, from the quarterfinals, you only need to win 3 games. Most of those games turn on 1 goal. So if you're lucky, if the ball that bounces behind the line is called right, if the referee makes a mistake in your favour, you can win the World Cup. England can win the World Cup. The other thing, what we say in Soccernomics, is they disproportionately select from the working class. And in England, the traditional working class is now only about 1/3 of the population, which means that English football is excluding 2/3 of its talent base. Well, that can't help very much. And the third thing we say very clearly in the book is they need to import Western European soccer know-how, because as we saw again on Sunday, English players themselves lack the know-how for positioning, for organising a defence, for example. Now, they imported that know-how in Capello, and based on one bad game, because on the whole Capello's reign has been really rather successful, based on one bad game they're now talking of jettisoning Capello and hiring an Englishman. And of course all this happens under pressure from the very powerful English tabloid media, and that is a big problem that England has, that the disproportionately powerful media is always forcing them into snap decisions.
Andrew, a quick thought before we take a break here. How have the fans taken it on the streets? Because we know, sadly, that often that excitement and tension spills over, and it ends up not so well on the streets.
Yeah, but with the England supporters, I mean, I've been following them in tournaments for well over a decade now, but the last few years they've been absolutely fine, and the fans that are down here have taken it in a pretty sanguine fashion. I think what I would say about England fans in particular, they're not necessarily Manchester United fans, Liverpool fans who are used to travelling and seeing success. One of the issues is that the fans that come to follow England are followers of smaller teams around England, be it Stockport County or Huddersfield or whatever, and they come here and can attach themselves to these big players, Steven Gerrard, Frank Lampard, and assume there's going to be success, that this is their big trip away every 2 to 4 years, be it the Euros or the World Cup, and they assume there's going to be success. There's not many Liverpool, Manchester United, Arsenal fans here, and so there's this huge expectation that this is their big trip away. They've not been away for a couple of years. England are going to win the World Cup, and then obviously it doesn't happen because, as we've seen over the last 20 years or so, England's record at major tournaments just isn't good.
We're going to take a short break here. When we come back, we'll use Soccernomics to try to predict the winner of the 2010 Football World Cup. We'll be right back. Welcome back. World Cup fever is still high as the pressure builds in South Africa, but is the approach to football outdated, and does the game need a fresh outlook based on empirical data? Could number crunching unravel some of the mysteries of what's being called the beautiful game? On the show I have author and journalist Simon Cooper, who's in Johannesburg covering the World Cup. He most recently co-authored the book Soccernomics, about the science and economics of the game. And from Cape Town we have Al Jazeera's football correspondent Andrew Richardson, who's been covering the tournament for us. Simon, back to you with an email that came in from a viewer by the name of Abdul Hasib Suenu, who says, science and technology have nothing to do with football. How scientific are the best football countries like Brazil and Argentina? If science was so critical to the game, countries like Japan and the US would be unbeatable. But on that issue of Brazil, I know that you're across a comment made by Dan Coyle, an author who wrote in his book The Talent Code, that Brazil is the best team partly because the players grow up playing futsal, an indoor game that's played on a smaller pitch with a smaller, heavier ball, and that allows the players to learn how to handle the ball with greater precision. So I guess there's if you agree with this, there's a science behind that too.
Yeah, I mean, I think the writer of the email is confusing 2 issues. One is, it's true that great players like Kaká and Robinho don't have science degrees. They're not studying science to make themselves better footballers. But there is a logic behind football, and Dan Coyle argues that why does Brazil produce so many great players? He says, well, it's futebol de salão, which gives them that tradition. There may be other reasons, but certainly there is a reason why Brazil has the best individual players, and it's worth investigating that. But the author says, the author of the email says, well, the US and Japan would be the best soccer countries if science mattered. Well, interestingly, the US and Japan have become a lot better than they used to be. They're rising very quickly through the ranks, and I think it's in large part because they've studied the best tactics, which are mostly Western European football tactics. They've learned from them, and I saw Japan in Pretoria yesterday. It was a very dull game, but Japan were terrifically well organized, and they got further than they've ever done in a World Cup outside Asia, and it's because they have studied football tactics. So study does matter. And another point I'll make is I was speaking to the great expert on penalties, who's a professor at London School of Economics called Ignacio Palacios Huerta. Now, this man is an economist, a scientist of sorts. He studied penalties, and he can make predictions about how Argentine and German players will take them on Saturday. And he will say, for example, that he thinks Higuain, the Argentine forward, kicks too many of his penalties to the right. Well, if Germany has that knowledge, that scientific knowledge, if you like, that would help Germany in a possible shootout. And so I think the study of data, which is much older in baseball, as you'll know, is now starting to penetrate soccer, and in 10 years, get time, we'll have a more scientific game than we have now. You'll still need the individual genius of a Robinho, but it might not be enough by itself.
Well, Simon, a quick thing, another interesting statistic is your list of top international performers from 1980 to 2001. Now, those nations are number 1, Brazil, United Germany at 2, France at 3, Italy took 4th place, and to the surprise of many, Iraq came in at 5th, well above Spain and England. How do you explain that?
Well, Iraq does seem to have a sort of genius at soccer as well. I mean, particularly if its problems start to diminish, it could become something like the Brazil of Asia. I mean, Iraq is not a large country. As we know, it's a very troubled country. It's not particularly wealthy per capita. And its soccer record for such a troubled country is amazing. I mean, they won the Asian Cup a couple of years ago. They came 4th in the Athens Olympics. Really, they go back a long, long way in soccer. And so I'm predicting that if Iraq turns out to be, say, if it becomes, say, something like Jordan, we're going to hear a lot more of them as a soccer power. I think, to me, Iraq was one of the revelations of our book. A lot of our findings surprised me, and the Iraq finding was one of those.
Andrew, of course, you've covered this sport across the world, and I'm wondering, in terms of atmosphere there in South Africa, I know it's the World Cup in particular, but in terms of the atmosphere in the various stadia, how does it compare with Europe, and how do you think that might have some bearing on the teams? Because obviously the kind of atmosphere is going to make a difference as well.
It is. I mean, I wouldn't say disappointed, but I think one of the issues at this World Cup has been empty seats. We've just been up at Port Elizabeth, and you would think for a last 16 game, any last 16 game, would be people queuing up to get into those grounds. And we were at the Uruguay South Korea game, and it wasn't full. And when it started raining, people could actually move out of their seats and move to the back of the stadium. And I think there has been this issue of big corporations buying seats for this World Cup and not using them, and a lot of people within Africa feeling excluded from this World Cup. This was sold to the people here in Africa, in South Africa, as being their World Cup, that they would be involved in it. And we were at a training session a couple of days ago here in Cape Town when Portugal were training at Athlone Stadium, which is a stadium in one of the poorer areas just outside of Cape Town. And the people outside there were saying that none of the teams have had any open training sessions in Cape Town. They were excluded from entering this particular training session. And I think too often teams exclude themselves from the atmosphere of World Cups. And you get the feeling, particularly with a team like England, they kind of ring-fence themselves away from the public. They're excluded from really feeling the vibe and the atmosphere of a tournament. And they go stir crazy in their hotel rooms playing on their Game Boys. And I think to an extent that is something they could learn beyond the statistical side of the game, to involve themselves in the tournament. It's interesting, some teams have chosen, the Dutch team for example, have chosen to stay in the middle of Johannesburg to soak up the atmosphere of the World Cup.
Well, Simon, here is an email that came in from a viewer by the name of Yahya Muhammad, who says, football should be managed by humans without scientific interference. Human errors make the game more interesting, otherwise it would just be a mega computer game. Is there a danger, do you think, in overanalyzing a game such as football, which is, you know, so much about emotion as well?
I think you can analyse it while keeping the emotion. I mean, what Stefan and I tried to do in the book was say, well, we've all been talking about football in bars and at home for decades of our lives, but was it all nonsense? You know, we think the team loses because of the coach. Well, we show in the book that actually the coach makes much less difference than people think. So we try to bring to all these emotional debates the hard edge of cool fact, but that doesn't diminish the emotion. I mean, I was watching Argentina-Mexico the other night, and when Messi gets the ball, I as a football fan am massively excited. When my team, the team I support, Holland, wins, it's a thrill. So you can have that love of soccer while also saying, I'm not going to be stupid about this. I want to be intelligent about my understanding of it.
Well, Simon, we had some data from the Riz Khan team. My team here researched and found certain information. Latin America and Europe have alternately won the World Cup since 1962. We show this to our viewers on a graphic here now. Brazil won in 1962, England in 66, Brazil again in 1970, West Germany in 74, Argentina won its first title in 1978, Italy was the winner in 1982. Diego Maradona led Argentina to win its second triumph in 86. Unified Germany was champion in 90. Brazil in 94. France became the winners of the first time for the first time 1998. And Brazil won its 5th World Cup in 2002. And then Italy was crowned champion in 2006. It seems pretty interesting, the way it's going backwards and forwards. It looks like it's going to be either Brazil or Argentina's World Cup. So I'm looking for a quick prediction from you.
Brazil, we ran a simulation, as I say, before the tournament, and we came out with Brazil as winner. We made a couple of embarrassing errors in the simulation. I won't say what they are, but certainly I would still, having watched Brazil 3 times here, be confident that they will win. I'm afraid that they will crush my beloved Holland on Friday to start with.
Okay. Well, Andrew Richardson, a viewer email that came in. If we can figure out football by calculation, then instead of playing on the ground, players should take maths classes. Well, maths classes apart, let me get your prediction on the way things have been going and who you think might take the cup this year.
Well, I saw Spain in the stadium behind me here playing their second round match against Portugal. They looked good. They play football in the way that I like to see it played, pass and move. So I'm hoping that they'll progress in the tournament. I mean, there is obviously this scientific approach Simon's talking about. I'm just thinking of the game coming up here in Cape Town between Argentina and Germany. Argentina have a coach in Diego Maradona who couldn't be any further away from the tactical acumen of some other coaches. He's all about emotion, he's all about passion, superstition even.
Right.
If you notice at games now, he arrives in his tracksuit.
Okay.
During the game he puts a suit on, and then if the tracksuit comes out straight after the game for the post-match press conference. He's all about superstition and passion, and that seems to be working for Argentina at the moment.
All right, well good, we got 2 predictions there. Thank you gentlemen for that very interesting conversation. And thank you for being with us. Now remember, you can follow our program on Twitter. We'll keep you notified on upcoming shows. You can send us questions and comments to pose to our guests. On the next show, justice denied? What's next for Canadian Maher Arar after the US Supreme Court refused to hear his appeal on wrongful arrest, deportation and torture? We talked to Arar about his ongoing battle to clear his name. Do make sure you tune in for that. You can send in emails, but from me and the team, until we see you next time, goodbye.